Tempest Rising is rapidly approaching your location. In fact, it's here right now as part of the Steam RTS Fest, with the playable demo being able to be downloaded and enjoyed by anyone for free for the next 10 days or so, until February 4th. Pre-orders are open for the game now as well, and after the 4th, it's a clear shot to launch on April 24th. This video is sponsored by 3D Realms, and as part of that I'm going to be doing a live stream of Tempest Rising on the 23rd. So if you want to play against me, then be on the game at 9 PM Eastern, 6 PM Pacific. And you'll probably smash me because I suck at PvP. Big thanks to them for supporting the channel and for giving me the last week or so to enjoy Tempest Rising, so I can tell you all about what's in this build and what you should expect. While this isn't the first time Tempest Rising has been broadly available to play, this build is, I think, the most in-depth it's ever been. Which makes sense, considering the game is releasing in just a few months. If you want to play it now, then go and start downloading it through Steam, and then come back to watch this video while it runs through. Don't forget to wishlist the game while you're there too. It feels like we've been waiting for Tempest Rising forever, and that completely makes sense because it was announced nearly 3 years ago, and it's popped up multiple times since then with news, demos, and announcements. The last time I played the game was over a year ago in August of 2023, and a lot has changed since then. We've had the reveal of the third faction, a change of publisher to Saber Interactive, and of course the firm announcement of the release date. Tempest Rising is an old school base building resource gathering RTS, highly reminiscent of classics like Command & Conquer. It's set in a modern-ish late 90s, early 2000s alternate reality where post an incredibly destructive World War III, the Earth is being overrun by Tempest, a plant-like organism that, as it turns out, can be utilised as a source of energy. The factions of the old world have formed to create two distinct entities to march into an uncertain future, those being the GDF and the Tempest Dynasty. There is also a secretive third faction, but they won't be playable on day one. You'll have to play the campaign to see what they're all about. The Global Defence Force, or GDF for short, are primarily a coalition of the United States, Canada, and Western Europe, so similar to NATO today, and the Dynasty, a collective of Eastern European and Asian countries who got hit the hardest by the Tempest outbreaks across the world. The demo we have available today seems to be very similar to the one that was released as part of the closed multiplayer beta test back in November. Included are both launch day playable factions, skirmish able to be played with up to 4 players, and ranked PvP, as well as 3 maps, one of which is completely new. Both factions are fully built out, as they will be in the final game, and as far as I can tell, this is pretty close to what the final experience is going to be on launch. Unfortunately, there are no campaign missions with this demo. I personally would have loved to see the inclusion of the ones that were in the Tacticon demo mode last year, but we can't have it all now, can we? Tempest Rising has always been impressive to look at, ever since its initial reveal trailer, but even still, I wasn't sure if they'd be able to tie it all together in its presentation. Thankfully, any concerns I had were swiftly put to rest when I played the campaign demo for the first time in 2023. As I said in that video, Tempest Rising brings the sauce, and everything from its animations to sound design to UI, special effects, it's all there. But I did have a couple of small gripes back then too, one of which were the building animations, which weren't as smooth as I'd like, with structures just kind of appearing out of nowhere, and the other was a general complaint about fire effects. Which doesn't sound important, but the Dynasty used fire a lot, so it seemed to crop up fairly often. It just looked off. It wasn't bright enough and the colour was a bit muddy. Thankfully both of these have been improved. Animations are now a lot smoother, with more detailed frames as the building is constructed, and fire has more depth, though it could still be a bit brighter for my taste. The point of me bringing these up is that it shows that there is a level of detail being strived for here that is very impressive. Playing this new build now, I was taken aback with just how good this game looks. Definitely one of the best looking RTS games in quite a while. Everything from the unit models themselves, to the weapon effects, to anything involving Tempest, to the little spotlights on the vehicles. It all just looks so darn good. They've even gone as far as making sure that the rotors on these big VTOL aircraft spin opposite to one another, as they do in real life, to counter the yaw effect inherent of spinning around big blades of metal hundreds of times a second. That's why most helicopters have a tail rotor, by the way. It stops them from spinning around uncontrollably from the torque of the main rotor. Anyway, side note, everything just comes together here really well, and I can't believe I got this far without talking about the music, because damn, it frickin' slaps, dude. There's a handful of tracks available in the game right now, and all of them can be played, skipped, or ordered via the in-game jukebox, a feature you love to see. There's even a track from the legendary CNC composer Frank Klepacki, with more to come, I believe, so that is very exciting. I really don't have any complaints with the presentation here, or anything I would change. Oh, actually there is one. I noticed that the weather effects, like snowfall, are actually tied to the camera rather than being just part of the map. So when you zoom or pan, the effect comes with you, and it just looks kinda weird. Hopefully they can fix that, but hey, if that's my biggest complaint right now, and things are looking pretty positive. Lastly, a word on the settings menu and how the game runs. I played on a decent rig with a Ryzen 9 3900X, 64 gigs of RAM, and a Nvidia 4070 Ti Super at 4K max settings, and it ran superbly. I did end up switching on DLSS to ultra quality and enabled FrameGen just to make use of my high refresh rate monitor. But if your computer is anything half decent from the past 5 years, I reckon you'll be totally fine here, and the system requirements reflect that. There are other flavours of upscaling too if you don't own an Nvidia GPU, namely AMD FSR and Intel XeSS. So no matter what graphics card you're using, you should be able to get great frames at basically any resolution. Oh, also while you're in the settings, you can switch on classic unit controls if you want to extend the old school RTS feel even more, which is fun to see. Hey, sorry for the editor Zaid jump scare. I just wanted to add in here that I ended up trying Tempest Rising on the laptop that I'm editing on right now, which is one of these Windows on ARM, like Snapdragon laptops. And not only did it boot, which was surprising in of itself, it actually ran okay with like the settings set to low and, you know, a bit of upscaling involved, but it was actually playable, and that was just kind of crazy. So yeah, if you have one of these Snapdragon laptops, you can play Tempest Rising on it. And I don't even have the powerful one. I have like the base spec one. So the more you know. Right, let's talk about how this thing actually plays, because this is quite a different experience to what I played back in 2023. That build had a single scenario, playable with only one faction, with limited units and buildings. This is 2 factions, a full tech tree, and no restrictions, so it gives a very clear picture on what Tempest Rising is going for. That's to say, if you don't enjoy this build, you probably won't enjoy the release. But conversely, if you are totally on board with what's in front of you right now, as I am, then you'll be nothing but excited for late April. The core idea of both factions, the GDF and the Tempest Dynasty, are quite similar. While these factions are advertised as asymmetrical, I wouldn't class them as the same level of asymmetry as factions in something like Universe at War. But in saying that, they are more asymmetrical than GDI and Nod in CNC3, so they land somewhere in the middle. Both factions have key focuses that differ from one another, and also have unique mechanics that are only accessible to them. The GDF are the more technically advanced of the two. They rely heavily on intelligence, using special abilities like marking targets to make their own combat units more effective against said targets. They also have a focus on drone warfare, having multiple units that just stand back from the front line and control remote quadcopters that can safely engage targets over the horizon. The GDF also have a special unique resource called Intel which is gathered in a few ways and can be used to employ special abilities and train some of their more advanced units. The Tempest Dynasty is more rudimentary compared to the GDF in terms of technology, but because of their history, being more experienced with utilising Tempest as a resource and therefore having a tighter grasp on its power, often employ the Tempest in more dramatic ways. Their power plants, for instance, can essentially overclock themselves with it, providing a boost to nearby buildings and units at the cost of a deteriorating health bar. Thankfully, the ability will stop having an effect if their health gets to a critical stage, meaning you can't accidentally blow up your base by forgetting to turn it off, which is very nice. And the asymmetry here extends even to minor mechanics. They have different building methods, with the GDF placing buildings before they're constructed, and the Dynasty constructing them first and then deploying them in an instant. And they both have a unique tree of doctrines, which provides access to distinct abilities and bonuses for their armies. And speaking of abilities, they also have a selection of 5 different ones that are unlocked throughout a game by building specific structures and researching certain things, ranging from deploying sensor pods to airstrikes to airdropping units on the battlefield. Both factions harvest Tempest as their primary resource, but I love how they have their own unique ways of doing it, and it leans to the lore that this universe has established. The GDF have a dedicated refinery and heavy industrial harvesters that travel to and from the Tempest fields, whereas the Dynasty have refinery vehicles that actually travel to the fields themselves and deploy when it's time to harvest. Each wheel breaks off as its own individual harvester and brings resources back to the mothership, so to speak. The whole unit can then pack up and move to wherever it needs to go, particularly useful if you've cleared out a Tempest field and you want to search for greener pastures, or redder pastures in this case. Honestly, I was surprised with how much lore there is for Tempest Rising, most of which can be accessed through the game's website if you're interested, and I would highly recommend you have a look. I'm sure the campaign will delve into it more in-game as well, but you can read all this stuff right now. There are write-ups and histories for every single unit and building. It is really quite something. There's named characters, models of vehicles and weapons. It's super cool. I love stuff like this and I could just read it for hours. It's super nerdy and I am so here for it. Look, I know this is a sponsored video, so take this with a grain of salt, but I have really enjoyed my time with Tempest Rising, and I am eagerly awaiting the full release to delve into the campaign and see what it has to offer. If you're interested in Tempest Rising, then check it out using my link in the description or pinned comment. And again, big thanks to 3D Realms for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel. If you give Tempest Rising a go in the RTS Fest, let me know in the comments what you think of it. I would love to hear your thoughts. Subscribe for the full review in April, and hit the bell to be notified the second it goes live. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.